So, Sandie Peggie and Dr. Upton and Fife Health Board, whoever thought that this would blow up into over 300 pages of judges' determination. So this went to the tribunal, and the key issue was that there's a hospital, there's a female changing room, and other changing rooms. And Dr. Beth Upton is a transgender woman, a doctor. She's worked in other hospitals where she's used the female changing room and female toilets. And also in this hospital, her new job, she carried on using the female changing room with her senior's permission. Now, in this hospital, there is a nurse called Sandie Peggie, and she has what are called gender critical beliefs. She believes that men cannot be women, and so she believes that Dr. Beth Upton is a man and not a woman. So Beth has the protected characteristic in law of gender reassignment. She has reassigned her sex from male to female. And Sandie has the protected characteristic of being a woman, actually, as does Beth. And also Sandie's beliefs are protected, as are Beth's. So Sandie believes that transgender women don't exist for all intents and purposes, and Beth believes that she is a woman. And so we have to respect and uphold the dignity, the privacy, the rights and the beliefs of both of those women. But Sandie objected to Dr. Beth using the female changing room. Now, Sandie did have alternatives that she could have used, that she chose not to. So it does make you wonder how upset she was about Beth using that changing room. And Beth also had alternatives that she could have used if she wanted to, but she didn't want to, and she didn't feel that there was a need to. There are a couple of occasions where Beth walked into the changing room when Sandie was in there, and Sandie replaced her top, stopped getting changed and left until Beth had finished, and then went back in. And then there was another situation where Sandie was in there, Beth was in there, and Sandie approached Beth and was actually quite nasty, asked about chromosomes, made some rather repulsive references to trans women being somewhat danger to cisgender women. And so it then went to management. Now, the hospital, did they handle it right? Did they have a policy in place? You know, their actions were right, as the judge found, that it was quite absolutely okay for Beth to use the female changing rooms. But did they do the right process? If only they'd had a proper trans-inclusive policy and a policy for changing rooms and toilets and dignity, safety and respect at work. Did they have a proper equality policy, equality, diversity and inclusion policy? And then when somebody made a complaint, that Sandie made a complaint, did they carry it through properly? Did they take her complaint seriously? Did they investigate in a timely manner? Did they refer to written documentation? Did they take everybody's views into account? Did they write it all down properly? Did they do it quickly? And that's where they fell down. And I think if we're going to learn from this case, there's two really big things for employers here. One, you do not have to exclude trans women from female spaces just in case or just because a cisgender woman complains or doesn't want them to be there. And then the other thing is, have you got a policy, however brief it is, however basic it is, you have to have a policy that gives everybody a safe place to go to the toilet, a safe place to get changed for work if they need to get changed for work, and a place that is safe and offers dignity and respect to people who use it. Now, dignity, safety and respect were looked at quite a lot in this case, and just because Beth is trans and was assigned male at birth does not mean that she was not safe and upset the dignity or respect for Sandie, who was assigned female at birth. So that's really important. The other thing that this case looked at quite a lot is the proportionality of taking action. So if the health board had said, yes, Beth can use the female toilets, as can all transgender women, what's the impact of that? And not just the impact on someone like Sandie, what's the impact on all women, all men, all transgender people, all less able-bodied people in the workplace. So you've got to have a look at all of those characteristics, the protected characteristics under the Equality Act, and make sure that what you're doing, make sure your policies don't disadvantage any particular group. And if you are going to disadvantage a particular group, there has to be a very good reason for it. And to be honest, in the Sandie versus Beth was quite happy to use the female changing rooms. Sandie didn't want her to. Now, Sandie or Beth could have gone to another changing room, but they both chose not to. So it's not just excluding Beth for Sandie isn't a proportionate way to achieve the aim of giving everybody somewhere safe and somewhere dignified and somewhere respectful to get changed. So if you are going to exclude or include anybody, then make sure that there's a reason behind it. So if everybody can use the female changing rooms, whether you're transgender or cisgender, how does that impact cisgender women? Well, they might not feel comfortable, but they can go somewhere else. But it gives transgender women and cisgender women somewhere to get changed and go to the toilet. What about excluding transgender women from female-only spaces? What impact does that have on everybody? Now, the impact on cisgender women, by far the majority of them in that hospital, was no impact at all. They don't mind which toilet and changing room the transgender women use. There was only one person who complained, and that was Sandie. There were some other apparently, but there were no names given. But if you exclude transgender women from the female-only changing rooms, what impact does that have on transgender women? Now, where are they going to go? Do they have to go to the men's changing room, which would be highly undignified for a woman to go into the men's to get changed? It would out transgender women who were not publicly or visibly transgender to their work colleagues, and it's unnecessary. So you would be. And what about some people say, well, what about they can use the disabled changing room? But why? Why should they? And the rules for using the disabled changing room, what's the policy behind that? Is it a disabled changing room, or a changing room for disabled people, or is it a changing room for anyone to use? Or is it a changing room for people with disabilities and transgender people to use? Your policy's got to be really, really clear. But excluding Beth and other trans women from female spaces severely impacts trans women, and it doesn't severely impact cis women if you let them use those spaces. So it's an important case. It's going to be talked about a lot. It cleared up a lot of the issues from the Supreme Court ruling that have been wrongly interpreted. The Supreme Court simply said that for the purposes of the Equality Act, because there are two characteristics that are protected, one is sex and the second is gender reassignment, they were merely clearing up some language around what sex meant, and they used the term biological sex. Excuse me. So the Supreme Court did not once say that all trans women must be excluded from female spaces, which is how it seems to have been interpreted by a loud minority, with some kind of nasty letters and threats going to organisations saying you must exclude trans people. And my word and advice to you organisations is, if you're going to make a blanket ban on women in the Women's Institute, girl guides in girl guides, women in the Labour Party, or women attending conferences, if you're going to make some very sweeping bans on transgender women, make sure that it's a very legitimate aim that you're trying to achieve by making that ban, and making sure that banning people from in that way is the only way that you can achieve that aim. It's and just make sure that you're not going to be at risk of being accused of making sure you're not being accused of excluding people without a very good reason. So I think this Sandie Peggie and Beth Upton NHS Fife case has got a lot to offer us. There are some unhappy people and there are some other very, very, very happy people. I've written about this in several posts on my Substack, so you can come and join me there and also come and tell me what you think.